The Calgary real estate market is continuing to shift, and if you're thinking about buying or selling, then you need to know what is actually happening beyond the headlines. Sales are falling, listings are piling up, and for the fourth straight month in a row, we're seeing prices starting to slide. But not everywhere. Some communities are heavily favoring the buyer right now, while other communities are still slightly favoring the seller. And one specific property type is starting to go cold. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you exactly where the market is softening, which areas are still holding strong, and why this shift might not be what you think it is, whether you're buying or selling. Hey, I'm Ryan Hawkins, a local realtor here in Calgary. And if you are thinking about buying or selling, I have put all the ways that you can get a hold of me down into the description. Whether you want an instant home evaluation in just 10 seconds, or think about your buying process when you just want to have a friendly chat. Either way, you can find all of that information down in the description. Okay, let's get right into it and let's get some takeaways here real quick as a quick summary. Gains mostly occurring in the newer communities. Inventory levels in July were just over 6,900 units, reaching levels not seen since prior to the pandemic and higher than long-term trends. The total residential benchmark in Calgary has trended down over the past several months and is currently 4% below last year's peak price reported in June of 2024. The rise in supply occurred as sales continued to slow and new listings improved. In July, there were just under 2,100 sales, a 12% decline over last year, while new listings reached just over 3,900 units and an over 8% increase over last year. In addition to the persistent economic uncertainty due to tariffs, sales and new listings were impacted by no further reductions in lending rates and adding competition from the new home market. Apartment-style homes are reporting the highest months of supply, while over 4 months, while both detached and semi-detached homes are seeing conditions remain relatively balanced at just 3 months of supply. So a good little summary there from our chief economist over at Krebs. And so let's go into some quick stats here for you to help you understand what is going overall in the marketplace. First, sales for the month of June, like as reported, was just under 2,100, which is down year over year at 11.6%. New listings right now are just over 3,900, which is a year over year increase of 8.5%. Inventory is just over 6,900, which is a huge increase year over year at 66.1%. And our months of supply is continuing to rise at 3.3 months of supply, which is a year over year increase of 87.9%. Now, while you'll look at these two numbers and see that they have risen quite significantly year over year, we are still just over closer to pre-pandemic levels. And so we went from extreme lows in inventory to now a more normal kind of inventory, which is why you're seeing such extreme highs in that number of 66.1% and 87.9%. So while the inventory is quite high, it is relatively normal for not only this time of year, but regular balanced market here in Calgary. If we look at the total residential benchmark pricing, it is just under $583,000, which is a year over year decrease of 3.9%. That would equal 4 straight months of decline. The detached price is down just under 1% at $761,800. Semi-detached price is still holding relatively strong at a year over year increase of just 1.4%. That equates to $970,500. Now we get into the more dramatic decreases, which the row prices, the apartment prices, the townhouses are a decrease of just under 4% year over year at $446,200. And the apartment price is down just under 5% year over year, $329,600. So we're seeing completely different property types doing completely different things right now. The detached and the semi-detached market is relatively balanced and stable at the moment. Trending prices are relatively flat or just slightly below, depending on the area, where the row and the apartment prices are really starting to slip right now with high inventory, high months of supply, and lower prices. So this is a good overall look at the individual property types right now. As you can see in every single property type, the detached, semi-row, and apartment sales are all down. And depending on where you look, like I said before, the detached and the duplexes are only down sales-wise by 6% year over year, but the apartment and the row townhouse are getting down there a little bit more significant. Now, new listings are up across everything except for the apartment prices, which are down about 3% year over year. But again, those sales for the apartment were down 23%, and we're still seeing high inventory coming up year over year. But again, we went from extreme lows to now a bit more of a normal kind of market right now. If you look at this, the detached, the duplexes at 3 months or just shy of 3 months is a relatively balanced market. It may be favoring the sellers a little bit depending on where you are in Calgary, but relatively balanced right now. Whereas the row market and the apartment market are starting to become more balanced. The apartment is going to start shifting a little bit more towards the buyer market, probably sometime this year, where the row is a little bit more balanced right now. It's a little bit more of a desired property type. So now looking at the overall map of Calgary here and its 8 districts, all the districts right now are negative benchmark price year over year. Some areas are doing a little bit better than others, as you can see in the Northwest, the West, and the South. And the Southeast are still doing quite well. But if you look at the East and the Northeast and the North, you're starting to see those prices year over year really start to slide. As you see, in the Northeast is down 7.2%, and the East down 7.4%. Now, just getting into a little bit more stats, this is probably one of my favorite pages in the entire report that comes out every single month, as it compares to what happened last July in 2024, and just kind of gives you a real sense of what's kind of going on overall. As you can see, we've already talked about these sales, which is down 11.58% from the same time last year. New listings inventory is rising, but there's really a couple areas that I really want to focus on, which is the months of supply, the sales to list price ratio, and the days on market. If you look at the months of supply here, which is right now at 3.3 months, which is that high increase, which we mentioned, just under 88%. But again, that was talking from extreme lows to now more balanced. So now we've gone to a little bit more of a normality, and the days on market is starting to show that a little bit as well, as we went from 24 days to 37. Now, while 37 isn't the slowest, it's also not the fastest either. So for you buyers out there, if you're looking, you do get the opportunity to see more inventory, but do not be taking too long to making a decision. If there's that home out there that you really like and it fits all of your needs, think about putting into an offer, because 37 days is not that slow, and the demand out there is still pretty high out there. So you don't know which buyer has also seen the home and is deciding to put an offer on that home that you desire. And then another real key point here is the sales to new listing ratio. These are all the homes that a percentage of homes that sell in the given month of the new listings. And right now it's about half of all new listings that come on into the market are selling in that same month, which does show a little bit more of that balanced market. And you might think that that might mean dramatic decreases in prices, but actually for sellers right now, and this is why I want to bring up the sales to list price, is that sellers right now are getting about 98% of their list price, which means if you took the $500,000 home, 98% of list price is $490,000. So while we are seeing more months of inventory, maybe longer days on market and more inventory, the balanced market is still showing that sellers are still getting a decent amount of return for their home at just 2% less than their list price. So this is important to understand, because sellers right now, you need to understand that if you price your home correctly and ahead of the market, you do have a decent chance of potentially getting your asking price or just slightly below. So don't try to test the market right now. Price correctly and you should have a pretty good outcome. Buyers, you also must understand that this isn't really the right time to go out and start lowballing offers, because there is significant evidence to suggest that sellers are still doing quite well. And even at 37 days on market, it might be attractive to you to throw in a lowball offer and see what happens. But a lot of the time right now, that the sellers are still getting that decent price. So you might want to price it accordingly, because most of the time they might just wait a little bit longer. So that was the overall market. And now we're going to look at the individual property types with a little bit more stats. So looking at detached homes here in Calgary, if you look at what is going on, again, total sales, but I really want to focus on that months of supply, sales to new listing ratio, sales to list price ratio, and the days on market. The month of supplies did rise 67% to three months overall, which is a pretty good balanced market, maybe slightly favoring the sellers depending on where you are. It's also good to know that just under 55% of new listings are selling in the given month, which is a decrease of 8.9%, what we've already mentioned. Days on market have creeped up to about 34 days. Again, not the slowest, not the fastest either. So it's important to really understand where in the city you are buying and what price point, because the sales to list price ratio is just sitting at 98.35%. So sellers are still getting a really good return on their list price in the detached market. Moving into the apartment market here, again, we're starting to see months of supply really start to creep up at 4.13 months. Again, 50% of the apartments, new listing apartments, are selling within the month. And even though the months of supply is rising and the days on market are starting to rise at 45 days, the sales to list price ratio right now is at just about 97%. And I'm going to show you a little bit why later in the video when we go over the individual districts for why that is. Some areas are doing much better while others are doing a little bit worse right now, but I'll get into that a little bit later in the video. Semi-detached still doing quite well for the moment. Months of supply is just under 3 months. Just over 56% of duplexes are selling in the month. That's the new listings. Sale to list price ratio is over 98%. So still doing quite well. And the days on market is okay at 34. Again, not the fastest, not the slowest. So they're still doing quite well. The row townhouse market, months of supply is rising to 3.2, with days on market sitting at 37. 55% of the new listings are selling in the month, and a decent return for sellers at 98%. If we compare the row townhouse to the apartment market, the two markets that are starting to really slip, I'm not going to see the row market slip more dramatically than the apartment market, as they're more of a desired market, as we saw throughout the years as people went from detached to duplex to townhome and now into the apartment market. As the row townhouse market starts to soften a little bit more, we're going to see that activity kind of hold a little bit more balanced and sturdy because it will be more of a desired market. Okay, so now we're going to go into the Calgary districts. And in my opinion, this is one of the most important pages in the entire report every single month for a couple of reasons. One, it shows you what property type in what area of the city and how they're performing. And so it's really going to determine of like, what is your budget, what area of the city you're going to wanting to buy in, and what property type are you wanting to buy as well. And you're going to be seeing how that market is specifically performing. So for example, let's get into it. If we were to look at the months of supply, and let me just quickly come down here to the semi-detached area. If we look at the South market, they are right now sitting at 1.79 months of inventory, which showcases a stronger seller's market right now. So if you are looking at the duplex market in the South, you can potentially expect to be maybe hitting multiple offers, quicker sales, and things like that because of what the data is showing us. But at the same time, if we come back up into the apartment market here and you go into the Northeast, well, their days on market is sitting at 7.44 months, which showcases a more favored buyer's market at the current moment. Their year over year price growth has decreased by 9.22%, and the sales to new listing ratio is just under 30%. So that is heavily favoring the buyers. So why that is important to you, because like I said before, you really want to know that what you're buying, where you're buying, and what your budget really gets you, because this is going to help you strategize and put in the best offer and to put you in the best position as possible. If you can see here, these bottom 5 for detached home are still performing quite well. They're all under 3 months of inventory. Their sales to new listing ratio is doing quite well, just over 70%. And overall, their year over year prices are sitting flat right now, a little bit more balanced at negative 0.5% and an increase of 0.13%. But if you were to look at the North, Northeast, and City Center, you're starting to see that over 3 months of inventory and sitting around that 50 to under 50% of sales to new list price ratio. And so that's really important for you to understand of kind of where your budget is going to get you and what kind of market you are going to be competing with. Looking at the apartment market here, again, we've mentioned that the apartment market is starting to slide and show some cracks in it. So as you can see here, the Northeast and the city center, where the predominant of the condo markets is in the city center, is starting to really get up there in the months of supply. The Northeast has really gotten up there right now, and even a year over year decrease of just over 9%. And like I mentioned before, under 30% of new listings are selling in the given month. So this is important for you sellers to really understand as well, not just you buyers. So if you know that that is what's happening, you need to get ahead of the market and really understand what is going on. Look at all the comparables, the actives, the solds, and really understand what your specific market is doing, which the property type and the area, because it's going to really help you understand where you need to be. Because right now in that area, the buyers hold all the control and they're making all the decisions right now. The rest of the city, most of the time, is fairly balanced right now. Some are just over that 3%, and some are starting to creep up over that 4% right now. So it does show balance, but it is starting to creep up there more into a bit of a buyer's market. So we're going to really see how this ends up by the end of the year. We really didn't have a spring market, but it'll be interesting to see what the fall market really shows us in the apartments and see if that demand comes back for apartments then. Semi-detached, as I mentioned before, is still staying relatively balanced right now, still holding quite strong. So sellers, you're in a pretty good position here. Days on market are anywhere between 3 to 4%, depending, except for a few outliers. The sales to new listing ratio is still doing okay in other areas like the Southeast is under 40%, but in the South, it is just shy of 80%. So really depends on where you are, but most of the time overall, it is relatively balanced and is still holding quite steady. The row townhouse market, we're starting to see a few areas shift into buyers markets. Like the Northeast is starting to creep up there a little bit. The North is doing okay, relatively balanced right now. The Northwest is still showing quite well, and so is the South. Sales to new listing ratio, depending on where you are starting to see a little bit less sales in some of these areas at 40%, but the Northwest is still holding quite strong at 73% of new listings selling in the given month. So still doing quite well. And so with all this data, what does that mean for you? If you're a buyer right now, it is really important to understand where your budget is going to get you and what the demand is in different areas and in different property types. And while you do have more inventory to look at, it's been a pleasure working with buyers to be able to see a lot more inventory and not needing to make a decision in hours. Homes are still selling pretty quickly, not the fastest, not the slowest. So it's important to know that if you find that home that meets your criteria, do not act slowly on it. Get onto it right away, because I've had a couple of buyers who have taken a bit too long in the market, and the next thing you know, that the home has gone pending. So it's really important to really dial down in what you are looking for, what area of the city, and what are your needs and wants. Once we find a home that works for you, let's put an offer in, let's get negotiating, and let's get you into a new home. For you sellers right now, this same time last year, you might have been okay at testing the market at a bit of a higher price, and you might have gotten it. However, in this market right now, it is important for you to know that you must understand what the market is doing in your area. Because if you price incorrectly, you could be sitting on the markets for days and weeks without a single showing or very little showings. And by that point, those buyers that could potentially have been perfect for your home have moved on to something else because the demand is still active out there. So it's important to get ahead of the market. You don't want to be chasing the market. You want to get ahead of it. Now, I'm not saying price your home dramatically lower. It's just, let's look at all the data available to us. Let's look at what's on market, what's been sold, and what's kind of going around the homes similar to yours, and see what actually happened, because those data points will tell us a good story. And let's price your home correctly. On top of that, you want to make sure presentation is a huge importance right now. Make sure your home is clean, it's tidy, it shows well. Do not give any buyers any excuse to not buy your home or to negotiate the price lower than what you want. Make sure you've done any minor fixes, get a handyman in there and do any minor fixes, because that will be important. So showcase your home well, price it well, and you're going to be doing just fine in this marketplace. I hope you enjoyed this video and you understood what is going on in the market. If you want to get a hold of me, all of my contact information is down in the description, whether you're buying, selling, or you just want to have a friendly chat about what your options are in the future. Give me a call and we can help you out. Until then, I look forward to seeing you at the next video. Take care.